one thing that I found across this country was that it didn't matter whether people knew who I was, because it wasn't about me. It was about something bigger and more important. And that's the basic, wonderful, fundamental values of being an American. And I don't know of any program in this country that more exemplifies and enhances those values than Scouting. And part of the reason is because you take young men out on a camping expedition. Some of these kids have never been outside of the jungle of concrete and steel. And you put them out there in the world that God made, as He made it. And you give them the responsibility of living out there for a weekend. And I heard about one of the camping trips that was taken here a couple of weeks ago with some young men in 70-degree weather. And I was impressed, I've got to be honest with you, because when I was in Scouts as a kid, and I was in Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts, when I was in Scouts, we thought we took a cold weather camp out if it was under 50 degrees. I mean, these kids are out in 7 degrees, and they made it. What did that teach them? It taught them their skills of being able to take on adversity and overcome it. And I'll bet you every one of those kids will be talking about that as long as they live. Except the kids that were frozen and are still out there. They'll go find them this spring. Mom and Dad. What happened to my kid? Take them out of the snow here one of these days. The truth is, I think all of us understand that when a young person is given responsibility, it's life-changing. Life-changing. And when a young person is accountable for the results of that responsibility, it's life-changing. And the fact is, most all of us will end up paying for the children of our community one way or another. It used to just irritate me. In fact, it would frustrate me when I would see how much money we were spending in our state budget to deal with kids who ended up in our juvenile detention centers. Because I don't know what it cost in Wisconsin. In Arkansas, it was between $60,000 and $80,000 per year, per kid, if that kid became a ward of the state and we had to absorb them into the juvenile justice system. Because the constitutional requirements of providing everything from 24-hour-a-day protection and provision, plus education, usually almost a one-on-one level of education to meet all the constitutional requirements, and you start adding up the medical expenses and everything else, you're looking at $60,000 to $80,000 per kid per year for every kid we took into the system, and we had to take care of. And somebody says, my gosh, why is government so expensive? It's not for any reason primarily other than this. Because we need to build a better people. And a lot of families aren't doing it, and I wish they were, and I hope they will. But in the meantime, for $100 a kid per year, they can be in the scouting program right here. I don't know about you, but I would think that $100 investment in a kid before he gets in trouble is a heck of a lot better deal than a $60,000 to $80,000 investment per year, because that kid never learned the basic values, where he started his oath by saying, "On my honor." I think those are the three most powerful words that scouting teaches a kid. On my honor. If there's any reason for which a young man ought to be encouraged to be in scouting, it's so that he will learn those three words. On my honor. That's a word you don't hear much anymore in our culture. We think about life as all about us. But to say that I'm going to do something on my honor means that I'm going to do it whether people see me do it or not. It means I'm going to do it because it's the right thing to do. And I'm not doing it because I'm going to get a temporal reward. I'm doing it because it is the right thing to do. And I should do it because not what I get for it, but what I become as a result of it. When I say I'm going to do something on my honor, it means I'm going to do it not because somebody has forced me, but because the pressure to do it comes from within, not from without. It's not somebody standing over me watching to see and making sure that I do it. It's something inside of me saying, I've got to do it, because my ultimate accountability is not to the person out there, my boss, my mom, my dad, or my scoutmaster. The ultimate person to whom I'm responsible is the God who created me, the God to whom I'm going to answer, and the God to whom, thank God, scouting still recognizes, appreciates. And if there's one thing I love about scouting, is that it has not flinched, and it has not run, and it has not been afraid to say that reverence and a respect for God is an important part of being a total young man. I'm grateful that Scouts is still A few years ago, I spoke at a prayer breakfast in California, and before I spoke, there was a man who spoke. His name was Dave, and he had been a prisoner of war in Vietnam. He told a story I'll never forget, and I asked him to describe it to me in detail after the event. But he said during the course of his imprisonment in the North Vietnamese prison, he said that they were taking many beatings and tortures, and it was just almost unbearable, and many of them were on the verge of breaking. He said their senior officer gave them 3 words that kept them from breaking and kept them going for the 7 years they were in captivity. And he said those 3 words that that senior officer told them they would repeat to themselves, and as one would be being led away for the beating or the torture or the interrogation, the other inmates would whisper to him these 3 words. And as they would come back, these 3 words would be uttered again. In the night, they would whisper them to themselves, and they would speak them openly when the guards couldn't hear. They sustained them through 7 years of the most horrible experiences that a human being could endure. And I was curious when he was talking, what were those 3 words? And I thought maybe those 3 words were God bless America, but he said those weren't the words. And I thought maybe the words were love your family. Those weren't the words. And I couldn't imagine what were those 3 words. And then he told me, he said those 3 words were these: return with honor. Return with honor. And he said they decided among themselves they might not return with their health. Some of them might not even return with their lives. Some might not return with all. But if they did in fact return, the one thing they could guarantee, the one thing that those cruel guards could not strip from them and take from them, that could not beat out of them, was the one thing that they held within themselves, and that was their honor. And they determined and purposed that no matter what, they would return with honor. And he said the greatest day of his life is when he stepped off the airplane at the Clark Air Base in the Philippines, having been in that prison for 7 years. He saluted those who welcomed him, and he realized that the one goal he had achieved. He had returned with honor. I envision a nation where young men grow up with an understanding of personal responsibility and accountability. But above all, they grow up with an understanding of what it means to live their lives on their honor. I can't think of a better way in which we invest, not just in the young men, but the future workforce, the future leaders, than to make sure that there are kids growing up in your community and across this nation who know what honor is all about.